A lady, if possible.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, please go on.
My name is Vikrant Raje. So my question is about how to get rid of English, because one of the important aspect of Indianization of judiciary or converting India to a Bharat is getting out of clutches of English. Because we do not have any common language. What can be a roadmap? Can Sanskrit be the alternative? So what are your views on this? Because Ambedkar has once said that Sanskrit is a good option as a national language. Thank you.
Thanks for citing Ambedkar, but I think this question can be addressed without falling back on him. So I don't need to prove my points necessarily by the touchstone of Dr. Ambedkar. He may be relevant for certain aspects. He need not be discussed on every subject. Now, as far as the question of a common language is concerned, there is a discussion, forget Dr. Ambedkar, by Sri Lokanath Mishra in the Constant Assembly debates, who is the father of the current MP from Puri, Sri Pinaki Mishra, a senior advocate in the Supreme Court. Go through the discussions on this particular subject. This was actually proposed actively when the language policy was being discussed. And they were discussing the provisions, I think, starting from Article 351 onwards to 343 onwards, in terms of what shall be the transactional language of the Supreme Court, what shall be the transactional language of the government institutions. This was a discussion that was going on. So Sanskrit was certainly proposed. I think the solution is not that difficult. Again, the history surrounding the solution is a serious problem, because will this be accepted in certain parts of the southern states? I'm not sure of it. Will it be accepted in the northeast? I'm not sure of it. Will it be accepted in Kashmir? I'm not sure of it. Will it be accepted in Bengal as it stands today? I have no idea. Or will it be even accepted in Maharashtra as it stands today? I really have no idea. Okay? So, as far as I am concerned, none of these discussions are possible without addressing the central question of distortion of history. Because Sanskrit has now been given a certain racial connotation. It has been given a certain colonizing connotation. And we are much more comfortable accepting the language of the admitted colonizer, namely the British man, but we seem to be very uncomfortable accepting the language of the alleged colonizer, namely the so-called Aryan. Okay. So I think unless and until we address the question of history and whether this particular language, see, there are two aspects. One is, of course, the question of self-esteem, pride. But the second question is a very serious and practical question of whether this is feasible. What is the economic cost? What is the cost of integration? How long will it take before we actually think of Sanskrit as not a dead language and as a language which is meant for transaction? That is a question which I'm not sure of. Because you see, at least other countries invested significantly in their education policy and language policy immediately after independence. Anybody who's read, and I've cited this example more than once, but let me repeat it for whatever it's worth. Hebrew was practically a dead language until the early 20th century. Until the Jewish Congress was set up, I think in 1897 by Theodor Herzl. And then they started thinking of creation of the state of Israel, namely the Jewish state, Der Judenstaat, that's what he said in his book. And they then started asking themselves, what shall be the common language? Because you see, by that time, for 2000 years, the Jewish community had lived as a diaspora in multiple countries. Somewhere in Russia, somewhere in Poland, somewhere in Germany, somewhere in Africa, Ethiopia, in all these places, Syria, Iraq. So the question was, if all these people come back, they have forgotten Hebrew, what is the common language that they shall speak in? So there was one madman called Yehuda ben Eliezer, who said Hebrew shall be the common language. And people branded him a crackpot during his life and time. But ultimately, when they set up their education system, they decided that Hebrew shall not only be revived, it shall be mainstreamed through the education policy. Okay. Ultimately, that madman proved to be the prophet, and he turned out to be right. Unfortunately, India still hasn't produced that one madman who can actually assert this and push it hard. Okay. Who says, no matter what, you guys can label me, you can call me whatever you want, but I am not changing my position one bit, and this is the only language that shall work. Because ultimately, history is not created by people who are agreeable. History is actually created by people who are disagreeable, who are intransigent, who say, मैं रास्ते से नहीं हटूंगा, जो करना है कर लो. which means you will have to either kill me or you have to work around me. These are the only two options that you give to the rest of the world. We have arrived at a spot where there must be a certain degree of civilizational intransigence to basically say, we will not change this position any further. This is our position. Those who can take it can, those who can't can leave it and also leave. If that position is something that you're not willing to take, after 20 years you'll continue to ask the very same question. So I'm basically telling you, address the issues surrounding the politics of Sanskrit. The caste politics of Sanskrit, the religious politics of Sanskrit, and the racial politics of Sanskrit, and then we can have a common conversation. Because I refuse to buy this nonsense that prior to the introduction of English, Bharatiyas were incapable of talking to each other. ठीक है, ऐसे तो नहीं हो रहा था ना? Okay. Apparently we were transacting business with Rome, but the Odia was not talking to the Telugu because English नहीं था ना? क्या करें? अरे रे, आपको English नहीं आता, हम आपसे बात नहीं करेंगे. Right? So that seems to be the beauty of our understanding today. We don't want to ask this question. If there were permits, if there were, let's say, Janapada to Janapada permits, and they were transacting business, and all of this was actually happening, what is the language? Why don't we ask that question? So, during the course of the Padmanabha Swami case, the one thing I learned is that in the vaults of the Padmanabha Swami temple, among the treasures that we find is also the Roman coin, because they used to transact. Why? What did Rome need from us? Spices. What did they give in return? Gold. So, Roman coins are there clearly establishing business. तो क्या sign language में बात कर रहे थे ये लोग? तो अगर ये उनके साथ बात कर सकते हैं, what is happening here? Internally, what was going on? You were even transacting business with Misr, which is Egypt, which comes from Egypt itself, comes from the word Copt, because Coptic Christians were among the earliest Christians to convert to Christianity. Coptics was effectively the name that was given to the people of Egypt initially. So the point is, if this was happening, why are we giving this entire impression that Sanskrit was the language of the elite? No. There are multiple levels of it. One is the advanced language, which obviously is meant to be discussed between the elites. But then there is also the Samanya Bhasha. Are you telling me that the language of Hindi itself, which is applied on the street, is the same as that is applied between the academics of Hindi? Not possible, right? So I think this requires a fair degree of investment in research. Because you see, solution ki baat nahi ho rahi hai. You are first of all trying to address the politics around every issue. Name one issue in this country which can be separated from the politics that has been created around it. Language, gender, caste, religion, Rashtriya identity, everything. So you have to be able to deal with that. Unfortunately, I don't think there is even an intellectual investment on that particular front with state support. Whatever is happening through individual efforts. And whatever is happening because of some madman actually burning the midnight oil and giving up his personal life to do this. A lot of people have done this and they have died bitter deaths. A lot of people have done this in the previous generation without any support from anyone. So therefore, let us first respect those people who are seriously working on these subjects and give them the support needed. Solutions will emerge. If not in one generation, at least in the next generation. Because some of these issues which have been in, let's say, which are suffering as a consequence of investment of over 200 years, you can't hope to address it within 10 years or 15 years. But the beginning must be made. Once the beginning is made, some people will start taking it seriously and even pursue it as a matter of choice of career. That's when this entire thing starts. How many people can you actually show me today in the development sector and in the language sector who have focused on producing papers which explain how we come out with an Indic language policy, which speaks of mainstreaming of Indic languages as part of a transactions, as part of a state institutions, and creating a common language? Why is that a discussion that's not there even at the PhD level? Forget the state level. Because there is no incentive for it. आप लिखेंगे उसके बाद क्या होगा? किसी लाइब्रेरी में पड़ा रहेगा, कौन उसको देखेगा? So that is where the role of the state comes. The state, its biggest strength is to create a multiplier effect. That is, if the state becomes the launchpad for a certain policy, X is capable of becoming X raised to the power of 10. So it has the ability to create an order of magnitude effect. And therefore, state investment is significantly necessary. But if the state is stuck in the very same old done to death nonsense that I don't have an identity, I'm a secular state, I don't have any relationship with my civilization is not Hindu, yoga is not Hindu, Ayurveda is not Hindu, finally Hindu is also not Hindu. You de-Hinduize everything under the sun, then what remains? इसके बाद discussion करने के लिए कुछ बचा क्या है? हो गया काम. Next.